Welcome to another Mother Runner, your best running friend in podcast form. We do all the talking, even on the uphills. I'm your host, Sarah Bowen Shea, along with co-host Coach Liz Waterstraat. Hello, Liz.
Hi, Sarah.
So your kids are out of school for the summer.
Yeah, we're on week 2 already.
Wow. All right. So how does that affect your workout schedule at all? You know, your work schedule, you work from home, you're juggling a lot of balls, woman.
I am, but it's life. It's a life, it's a very privileged life. I will say that. So these are my problems, but also my privileged problems. And yeah, long ago, I accepted that there is no plan every day. There's no like, oh, I have to be up at this time or do this at this time. I just go into each day and figure it out. Right now I swim in the morning at 6 a.m. So that at least gets that out of the way. And then the rest of the day, I just find my pockets of time. I mean, it's complete chaos, but I think all the moms out there understand it's a special level of chaos. A lot of snacks and meals
snacking.
And cleanup, and everyone's on a different schedule, and the dishwasher's always going. And
I was just about to say, how
going.
many times in a day do you run the dishwasher? That's the thing.
At least twice.
Yeah. And it doesn't empty itself. Shockingly enough.
No. And you don't like, what's the solution there? Do you could use paper products, but
oh, no.
Right. No. Right. So then you're in this situation where you're always using stuff that needs to be washed, and you clean up from one meal and somebody's in the kitchen looking to make another meal. And then there's the teen who makes second dinner at like 2 a.m. You come downstairs, it's just like, what? I know when I went to bed, this was clean.
Second dinner, the joy of having a young male in the household.
Yes. It's just all these moms with these little kids who just talk about how hard it is. I'm not saying it's not hard. It is hard. It's a different kind of hard.
Yes.
The 2 a.m. dinner when you are 50 years old and you want to go to sleep, or the 10 p.m. come home.
Yeah.
No, yeah. This new schedule is not working for me.
Yes. The leftovers, if you can talk your kid eating into eating leftovers, that was a real game changer. My kids did not used to like leftovers. And finally now my son John enjoys leftovers. So when he is home, he will eat leftovers for sometimes first dinner, because sometimes my dinner is family dinner is served too late. So there's kind of a lunch dinner around 5:30 or 6.
I remember talking to Lorinda Donaldson.
Yes.
Okay, years ago on the podcast. And I think Lorinda
we should say
she
has 10. Yeah, that's the number that comes to mind. Yes. Yeah.
10 kids. And she said at some point, she like locked down or made the declaration that her kitchen was closed between certain hours of the day. And I remember thinking, oh, she's savage. Like, wow, Lorinda. And now Lorinda's my hero.
Right. You're like, should I make a sign or just send it on the family text thread?
The family chat, or would padlock just be too aggressive at this point?
The neighbors who stop by might wonder what that padlock is for. They might ask questions.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, summer has officially kicked off or will soon. And it's predicted to be a scorcher. So I decided it was time we did an episode about exercising in the heat and other extreme weather conditions. Our guest is Christopher Minson, Ph.D., a professor of human physiology at University of Oregon, where he is also co-director of the Exercise and Environmental Physiology Labs and a founder of the Bowerman Sports Science Center. He's worked with many professional sports teams, Olympic athletes, collegiate and age group competitive athletes in the U.S. and around the world. He does a lot of research on women athletes in particular. So it's time for a quick break before our conversation heats up. Stay with us. Welcome, Chris, and go Ducks. My younger daughter is finishing her junior year there at U of O.
Fantastic. It's a good place to be.
Yes.
Chris, tell us a little bit about your athletic background.
Sure. Well, the simplest way of saying it is I've been an ultra endurance athlete my entire life. Originally, grew up in Colorado, I really thought I was going to be the next American champion downhill skier, but I never developed to be a very big guy or very strong guy. So kind of endurance fell in my lap. But I also love swimming. So swimming became a very large part of my life. Swam all through high school and started to in college, and then just got really, really sick of the pool. And so I picked up a bike and started doing a lot of cycling, ended up racing for University of Arizona cycling team, and then took a few years off after that and tried to be a professional cyclist, but ran into a problem where I was too slow and no sponsors wanted to pick me up being in the back of the pack. But I got really into triathlons for quite a while as a swim coach in San Diego, and a lot of my athletes were swimmers. Sorry, were triathletes. I'm sorry, a lot of my swimmers were triathletes. So they convinced me to start doing triathlons. So I did that for quite a few years. And then, but I've been like also very early on in the mountain biking scene, and so I did a ton of mountain bike racing very early on. I still do a lot of bike races, just jumping in for fun now, but
Hmm,
was quite competitive on the mountain bike circuit and the gravel circuit for a while. But I just do it for fun these days.
very nice. Nice. So no Unbound for you this past weekend?
No, no, it's been on my list to maybe do. And my main cycling partner, in fact, one of my former swimmers from San Diego, has become one of my best friends and someone who convinced me to do Ironman years ago. We've done a number of really ultra endurance cycling events, and he just did Unbound for the first time this week,
Mm,
this last past weekend. And
hmm.
I'm coming off a knee surgery, so it was off my
Oh,
list for sure. And it's a
oh,
lottery now; you have to try and get in, so it's just a matter of
oh!
luck
I
a
didn't
little
know it was
bit.
so hard to get into. Oh, interesting. I have a friend and a longtime member of the Another Mother Runner community who just did her first gravel race, a 50 miler out there. So shout out to Laurel.
Fantastic, good for her. It's excellent.
Yeah. So, how about your professional background? Kind of what got you interested in the topic of exercise in the environment?
Sure. I was actually an undergraduate at Arizona in psychology, but what I found is I really liked neuropsych, biopsych, and I had an exercise science minor because I was so into sports and things. And then when I moved to San Diego, I was really trying to figure out what to do. And when the bike racing thing wasn't panning out to pay the bills, I went back to school and luckily I got into San Diego State University to do my master's. At the same time, I also got hired by the Naval Health Research Center, and this was during the first Gulf War. Of course, we didn't call it that then, but and I was just hired really to be this a graduate student who's just helping with these things called heat strain countermeasures, meaning the United States was trying to get fight in Iraq, in the Middle East, and we were prepared for the Cold War, so they really didn't know how to manage heat well enough. So I was
Mm.
just helping with that, and that sounds fancy. The truth is, I was the one cleaning the vomit off the treadmills and cleaning rectal probes and that kind of stuff. But it was glorious enough for me that I wanted to continue in on that path. And I went to Penn State for my Ph.D. Worked with a guy named Larry Kenny, who's one of the world's experts on thermoregulation, aging. And then from there, I did my postdoc at Mayo Clinic with a guy named Mike Joyner, who's one of the foremost exercise physiologists in the world. So from that training, it's just a natural fit for me to come to University of Oregon, where there's a long history of environmental physiology here and great exercise science. So I've now been here 26 years. So
Mm,
yeah,
awesome.
quite a bit.
Nice.
So, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the effects of heat on the body when it's exercising?
Absolutely. If it's okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about humans and thermoregulation, especially with heat.
Hmm.
Humans really are the best thermoregulators when it comes to running in the heat. People I think, oh, camels and other animals, but when it comes to mammals, humans are incredible and absolutely incredible. The way we can adapt. In fact, our ability to adapt to running in the heat, it really helped shape evolution for humans. From the going back to days of persistence hunting, where if you go out your back door and try and catch a squirrel, you're not going to be able to do it, right? But working together with a couple people, you can actually chase down a gazelle if it's hot enough, and you keep them running. They can't thermoregulate very well in the heat. So as long as you keep that animal running, they're going to overheat, and then you can walk up and have a warm meal. So humans have incredible ability to tolerate heat. The challenge is that most people, and this includes a lot of endurance athletes, don't try and benefit from the heat anymore. And that includes, oh, it's a really hot day. I'm going to go ahead and get in my trainer where it's nice and cool. And I think we've become a little too comfortable. And so I can certainly go through some of the physiology, why we're so good at it. But that's, I think, a good background to start, at least why I got so excited and interested in thermoregulation in humans.
Yeah. So yeah, talk more about what it is. How it is we adapt and that sort of thing.
Sure. One of the biggest things that happened was we developed this very unique skin blood flow. And so we have I won't go into deep physiology mechanisms, but our ability to raise our skin blood flow up and bring heat from our deeper core or our exercising muscles to the surface of our skin is unique. And then our sweating system on top of that is also very unique. So as long as we can stay hydrated, and that's a key point for humans, right? In the heat, we have to stay hydrated. As long as you're hydrated enough, you can maintain your sweat rate, and then you can bring this nice high skin blood flow. You can bring this heat from the exercising muscle to the skin surface. That warms the surface of the skin. But then as that sweat evaporates, and it's important to say it goes from the liquid phase to the gaseous phase has to happen, has to evaporate. So all those dripping off when you're on your wind trainer in your garage or whatever, your room, and you're dripping sweat everywhere, or in the gym, that none of that dripping off sweat is cooling you off. It has to evaporate. That phase shift from liquid to gas takes energy. That energy comes from the heat that you've generated from your skeletal muscles, and your skin brought it up. So that system is extremely unique to humans. Some animals, including horses, have some sweat, but it's actually a different type of sweating and not nearly as effective our sweating is. So humans are quite unique in that regard.
Hmm. Hmm. So it seems like we used to be able to acclimate to the heat better because summer weather came on more gradually. Now, it can be in the 50s one day and suddenly skyrocketing to the 90s the next. I mean, the East Coast has definitely been undergoing a lot of this in the past couple of weeks. How do you suggest folks approach acclimatization now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're right. It's not only that it comes on very quick, is that if you look historically, even before we saw the massive changes of climate change, although it has been going on for quite a while, anytime an endurance athlete's going to compete in the spring, they're at more risk of heat-related illnesses and performance detriments. So we get some natural heat acclimation just through the summer. So if you look at the exact same temperature, exact same race in the spring versus the fall, you'll see a lot more people hitting the medical tents, a lot more people having problems because they're coming out of a cooler winter. And that's something I work with a lot of the elite athletes here who are Oregon Ducks, as well as the Bowerman Track Club Elite, as well as other athletes. Is that Eugene is not really that warm in the wintertime. It's very rainy. It's can be quite cold. Then we have the spring weather come on, and it can come on very fast. And a lot of times these athletes are also competing other places. So the long story short is I'm really of the belief that starting midwinter or so, starting to add heat adaptation to anyone who's going to be planning on running in the summer, there's going to be benefits. So the how to implement that has a couple nuances that we can certainly talk about. But I really do think that all athletes, all endurance athletes, really need to be thinking about gaining what I call a heat adapted phenotype, meaning have some basal level of heat adaptation at all times, and then you can ramp it up, ramp it down, depending on what you have going on.
Interesting. So, are there conditions where someone should consider not exercising outdoors?
Absolutely. I mean, there's all kinds of times. So, I mean, one of the biggest challenges we have in the West, and now the East Coast is seeing it as well, is just the wildfire smoke, right? So when the air quality is really bad, people need to not go outside. Those, less than 2.5 micrometer particles that are in the air can be very damaging to lungs and the cardiovascular system long term. And so I know it wasn't the question, but that's certainly a time you certainly don't want to be outside. The other challenge, and this is very true of Eugene, being at the very end of the Willamette Valley where all the grass seed and we have so many trees here, the pollens can be really, really bad. So there's times that people really struggle being outside for those. But I'm guessing your question was mostly more about the heat. So the big thing I try and get people to understand, and who I'm working with, is I again emphasize that people should gain this heat adapted phenotype. But what I really want them to do is to separate their key workouts, their top interval days, their really long days. They need to be, 4 or 5 hours in the saddle or running for 2 hours or whatever it happens to be. I want to separate those from the heat adaptation periods. The reason for that is because if you do the heat adaptation correctly, there's no downside to your training. There's only benefits. But if you're training regularly in the heat, you're going to be training slower. Same thing as going to altitude. You go up to 8,000 feet of elevation and you say, I'm going to run up there for a while. You're going to be running slower. It's just so the neuromuscular adaptations will be different. This is why that concept of live high, train low is so effective and so important to people. But I think we can do some of the same things with the heat. So in the heat of the day, I don't recommend people going out unless it's going to be a shorter bout and they're going out specifically to gain some heat adaptation. So one of the things that I've really been emphasizing, especially with my elites, is that it's really, really hard to balance the training load they're putting into their legs, into their system, right? And heat adaptation, because heat is an additional stress. Exercise is a stress, right? So if we're not careful with the two different stresses and adding them both on, you can actually make someone perform less well, right? Even if they may be able to perform better in the heat, they may not perform, their overall performance may be down. So it's trying to find that balance. So we use a lot of passive strategies, meaning sauna or hot tubs, in addition to making sure they do some of their running outside in the heat. And my athletes are spoiled because I have an environmental chamber that I can control and do all kinds of special stuff with at any time of the day that I want. But a lot of the athletes I work with don't have access to that. So again, that's kind of foundation start for
Mhm.
where the conversation can go.
So, with your athletes who are doing the heat adaptation, what are some of the markers you're looking for to indicate that they're getting more acclimated? And then how are you tracking that?
Right. So again, I have a very sophisticated research lab, right? So when I'm working with most athletes that come to me and are in Eugene and have access to what I'm doing, then we look at things like we measure their core body temperature with these ingestible pills, but they're like $70 a pop. So it's right, and they're only one use out at one and back, and so. Uh, we don't use those all the time, but when I can, I use those. And then what I want to see is that their body temperature, say we put them in a very specific environment. I do think more in Celsius, I'll try and convert, but 38 degrees and 40% relative humidity is kind of what I aim for. It's right around 100 degrees, 40%, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 40% relative humidity. And what I want to do is do that repeatedly over time and see, make sure that their heart rate in that environment is coming down. So working at the exact same running pace, say they're running a 7 minute mile or something like that, which is fast for me, but very slow for them. I want to see their heart rate at that steady state heart rate reducing in that heat, and or their body temperature reducing that heat. But one of the main things I also look at, and this is something I do as a quick side note, I was born in Costa Rica and I have a lot of connections there, and I've worked closely with the Costa Rican Olympic Committee. And it's they don't have the access that we do to a lot of the tools I do with my athletes here. So one thing I work with them a lot, and with a lot of age group athletes, is to get them to do to do perceptive physiology, right? So I have a kind of a scale that goes from 0 to about 10. And if you think of 0 is I'm either cool or I'm totally thermoneutral. I don't feel hot or warm at all. And then by the time you get to 10, it's the hottest you've ever been. It's dangerously hot, like you think you're in risk of heat stroke. I want people at like a 6 or 7, which means they're feeling somewhat hot, right? If they're feeling that kind of somewhat hot to hot, then I know that they're in that zone where I kind of want them to be. I don't want them going into uncomfortably hot. If they're uncomfortably hot, unless there's a very specific reason for that, then I think they're adding too much stress to their body. They're not doing that slower adaptation thing. So I think that perceptual scale is really, really important. That's the simple part of it. The reality is I'm working with athletes who are increasing their training cycle. I'm working with athletes who have tapers come up. I'm working with athletes who have jobs and lives and other things too, right? And so you can't go out and plan to run in the same environment every day, right? So again, using that guide and saying, all right, it's kind of cool outside. I'm going to overdress a little bit and then make sure of all safety factors. If you're going to go outside, make sure you tell someone where you are. Make sure you bring your phone. Make sure you stay on cell service. Tell someone when you're going to be back. All those kind of things you do if you're going to go running by yourself somewhere. But make sure you do that in the heat. If it's really hot, then stay near your house or your
Mhm.
wherever where you can get cooled off. So keep those things in mind. But then you can overdress a little bit. So wear a little more clothes. So if it's like today, I think it's going to be in the 80s. For my athletes, it's not hot enough to really get much heat adaptation, even in the middle of the day, right? So we might have them like wear an extra layer of clothing. And again, I want to make sure this is not going to be one of their key workout days,
Mhm.
right? If this is their interval day, I'm like, no, you get yourself as comfortable as possible. You want your intervals to be done hard. You want to be recovering. You want to, all that, right? You want to do it at full intensity, not be overheating during that process because you'll be doing them slower. So that's kind of it's more an art than a science, even though I'm a scientist. But I've kind of found that's really kind of the case to really work with the individual athletes.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Mhm.
All right, it's time for another brief break. Stay with us. So, we're fortunate here in Oregon that we don't have a ton of humidity most of the time. What do you say to people, though, who are, staring down now 3 months of kind of brutal humidity as well as heat?
Humidity is very difficult for us. And if you go back to what I originally said about why humans are such great thermoregulators, is that we have that sweat mechanism and that sweat has to evaporate. The problem is with high humidity is that the water vapor in the air is so high that we can't evaporate as much sweat. So that makes it really, really difficult for humans. So when it comes to trying to adapt and do really, really well in human environments, there's only so much we can do. There is no doubt that I'm doing some heat acclimation, and for instance, right now I'm preparing some of the duck athletes to go to Arkansas, where it's going to be hot and humid coming up, and so they're track athletes, so the longest distance they're going to be doing is a 10K, and at speeds they run is just over 30 minutes for these women, right? So it's crazy fast. But still it's relatively short, but they can still overheat and have performance detriments from that case. But even the 800 and the 1500 meters with multiple heats and things like that, we get concerned about them getting overheated. So, and the humidity is what they feel the most. So what I try and do is do some dry heat acclimation to them first. There's a lot of physiological benefits just to heat acclimation in general without tiring them out too much. And I can do that in a dry environment. And so some of those are, we have these things called heat shock proteins, which are these specialized proteins, which we can, that bind to, they're really in every cell of your body. And if they get upregulated, they just kind of protect you from too much heat, protect your proteins from breaking down the heat and those kind of things. They also help with our perceptual responses and how we feel to the heat. But when it comes to your question with the humidity, then I start trying to add some humidity in, mostly so they can kind of feel what it feels like, right? So one of the tricks with humidity is that oftentimes in the day, as it cools off, so you're thinking about a 5 or 6 o'clock run as opposed to an early morning run, oftentimes the humidity is higher at that point because the relative humidity has gone up as the day cooled down a little bit. So if someone's going to try and be in the humidity, sometimes I tell them to try and get up early in the morning, and when it's not as hot, the humidity is going to be high, no doubt, but at least hopefully some of it precipitated out overnight. With the cooler temperatures, the temperature comes up again. So it's kind of the best time to go and try and do it. But there's only a limited amount that we can do to help people really with humidity, other than the generalized heat acclimation protocol.
Hmm. I want. I am so not a science person, so bear with me on this. But
It's
the
okay.
proteins you mentioned, talk more about that. I'm intrigued by that. I mean, you're not saying this isn't just eat a steak and then go out for a run. Like what is it that these proteins are?
Right. So they're for this discussion, they're aptly termed heat shock proteins. And the reason why they're called heat shock proteins, they were first identified in cells that were exposed to heat stress, and they seem upregulate. As we've learned more about them over the years, we find out that these proteins are really, really highly conserved, meaning that when humans were single-celled blobs floating around in the ocean, we had heat shock proteins. They really help us adapt to our environment. So again, for us, they're called heat shock proteins, which is great, but they do respond to hypoxia. They respond to inflammatory stresses. They respond to cold stress, respond to a lot of things. And there's a whole different category of types of these things and what they do and where they're located and those kind of things. But to keep it simple, really what they do is they have a lot of different roles, and when they get activated within cells, they help that cell tolerate heat stress. So if we were to use human cells that we can take from someone's cheek or other places, we use a lot of cells we purchase from human lines, and then we expose those to a significant heat stress. A lot of those cells will die. But if we took those same cells and we gradually expose them to some heat stress and then put that same what was lethal heat stress to those cells, if we've gradually adapted them, they tolerate that heat stress and they don't die. And so what's happening is these heat shock proteins are helping stabilize other proteins inside of our skeletal muscles, in our skin, in our brain, in our heart, and they help just protect from the actual heat. They also do other things too. They also were involved in that famous molecule right now called nitric oxide, which everyone talks about to try and, it increases your blood flow. It's important for all kinds of human physiology. It's important for the health of your blood vessels as a whole. Those all increase as well. We've even seen it in women we've been studying with polycystic ovary syndrome. If we put them through a heat acclimation protocol, we've seen that we can actually improve their insulin signaling as well. So they're less, because women have PCOS. It's now called PMOS, but just changed a couple weeks ago. But they oftentimes are high risk of insulin resistance or prediabetes or even diabetes. So we use heat stress and heat adaptation to improve those. So these molecules have huge factors throughout our body. And again, they're not just responsive to heat, other things as well. But being a heat person, I love the fact they're heat shock proteins.
Um, so you mentioned earlier about how important hydration is and how key that is. What advice do you have about hydration when
Yeah, what's
exercising in the
interesting
heat?
about hydration is just that, at one point I thought I was going to become a researcher in hydration world, and then boy, those people are seem like a very contentious, never agree type of group of people about what's best, what's perfect, what's this, what's that. So I'm speaking more from my own athletic background and what I do for my athletes as opposed to where the science is currently, because it's all over the place for what you want. One of the things I like people to do when they can is to start learning about their own sweat rates. So a simple way to do it is say, all right, we have people take a nude body weight. And after that point, we don't have them void anymore. No number one, no number two. If they drink any water, we measure exactly how much water they're taking in, right? And then we have them run for about an hour or something like that. And then from that, we have them, come back into lab, towel themselves completely off, and take another nude body weight, so we can see exactly how much they sweat over that time period. Right. And one thing that happens is you heat acclimate, your sweat rate actually may go up a little bit. It depends on all the different environmental conditions, but in general, you're gonna sweat more. But you're gonna keep your body cooler by more sweating. So paying attention to those is really, really important. And they may, I have one athlete, for instance, he sweats about 4 liters per hour, which is massive. He's a
Mm,
track. He's mostly a 1500, maybe a 5K runner, so his events are short, thank goodness. But as he ends retiring from the professional ranks, he may want to start doing 10Ks, marathons. A lot of them do because there's more money in marathons than there are other things. So he's gonna have to really, really think about that. He thinks about it now a lot about how much he needs to hydrate. So, a typical value would be you lose about, again, I stick to the metric system because I'm a scientist and it just makes it so much easier. One kilogram of body weight loss is 1 liter of water that you have to replenish. We always do about 1.2, so add a little bit more water back to replenish for that. So if you look at your body weight changes, make sure you're drinking maybe another 20-25% more water afterwards to recover. That's what you want to do. Again, if you're training for a marathon, you're going to want to know how much fluid can I take in, but you can at least get some good idea of what your sweat rate is under those conditions at those intensities, and then you can kind of backtrack and say, all right, every 20 minutes I need to drink this much, and then you
mm,
try and get your gut tolerating it. We can do some really fancy stuff and look at what they put in there as far as the electrolytes, but the reality is there's a wide range of how much salts people lose in their sweat. And it can be modified over training and things, but not a whole lot. It's almost more genetically defined. So
mm,
if you go out and do a 30-minute run, and you come back, and then when you're cooled off, you look at your shorts or your jog bra, or something like that, and you see like clear salt marks, you're a heavy sweater.
mhm,
Right. If you do that in like, a perfect example is I can go out and do a 5 hour bike ride, right? And I come back and yeah, my clothes is full of salts. But
mm,
that's because I've been biking for 5 hours, right? So, but if I only go out for an hour, I'm wet. And yeah, it's a little salty, but it's not like I have major salt stains everywhere. And that
mhm,
means I'm kind of a moderate salter, sweaty, salty sweater.
mhm,
Um, so that means I kind of find the middle of the ground about how much electrolytes to put back, the normal electrolyte drinks. I don't have to like super do it, those kind of things.
mhm.
So those are some kind of practical things I found that work really well, even though we have the fancy tools to back it up. It's the simple tools sometimes work better.
Mhm, mhm,
So, what about advice on how to dress effectively in the heat? I coach someone who's in Florida and they've been playing around with purchasing the different cooling fabrics or tops. And at least from what we've seen, there is a noticeable difference in his heart rate being lower while wearing one of these tops. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, it's a complicated thing because if you look in the research, you look at all the different ways people try and cool themselves off. And I worked with a lot of different sportswear companies trying to find out the best material to use. And at the end of the day, the best material, for lack of a better term, is no material. I mean, our skin being exposed to the natural movement of air and being able to not have any barriers to sweating is really the most effective. So something, if you have any other kind of clothing that has a little bit more breathable material, that's certainly going to make a difference, right? Sometimes it's better if we try and block the sun as well. Again, I'm a perfect example of how I wear arm warmers on a warm day, white colored arm warmers, and I spray water on them when I can to try and help the
Mm-hmm.
cooling off, just keep that radiant effect of the sun down. So the best approach is in that case would be if you're really in the bright sun, doing something to kind of to cover parts of your body that can be most affected by picking up the radiant heat, but that breathe really really well can make a difference. At the end of the day, and very thin materials, so good having you want air transfer and evaporation through those. At the end of the day, though, I haven't seen anything where we compare a person wearing very little on their upper body and lower body other than just shorts and a jog bra, and then put a shirt on them of any material, even though companies have hired me to test their materials. None of them work as well as that. So it's there's always going to be some inherent challenge with that.
Mm, mm. So you mentioned the white arm warmers and putting some water on them. Do you have other hacks for? I mean, so should people be wearing light colored clothing? You know, a lightweight wool. Putting ice in your sports bra. That's I realize you don't do that, but people do. And any other hacks like that?
Yeah, so a lot of those hacks, if you will, are really about perceptual
Hmm.
temperatures, right? So if you like, I follow mountain bike racing really closely, especially the endurance mountain bike racing, they call it Olympic distance, um, and a common thing to do. The races are usually about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and 40 minutes, maybe or so. And see a lot of the women warming up, and they'll put ice packs down their back. They have an ice vest on. So trying to keep your body temperature, if you're competing, trying to keep your body temperature from getting too high post warm up or during the warm up, and you warm your legs up, but keep your body temperature low. Once you're actually running or cycling, what it happens to be, especially for running because speeds are slower. Putting ice in it feels great, and it may make you a little more wet, and that helps evaporate, and that can help cool you a little bit. It's not a major difference.
Hmm.
And this is I try and get into some people's heads just to say like the best thing you can do is be heat adapted. Full
Hmm.
stop. Right? All these tricks and little things certainly can help. Squirting water over your head, running through a mist, all these things can help a little bit again, but it's really not gonna. When we think about it, we're all big chunks of meat, and we're generating a lot of heat. Right? That's just a lot of ATP being created, and that's always a byproduct of that is heat. So we just have you know 75% of all the energy we burn goes to making our body temperature.
Wow.
And so uh, really trying to understand that the best thing we can do is make sure that we can thermoregulate. We are adapted to that heat. We have these heat shock proteins activated and elevated, and we're feeling comfortable. The other little bits certainly important, right? And again, I think about cycling. I mean, I'm you know having done Ironman, having done a lot of triathlons, I am a slow runner, and so if I'm pouring water on my arms, I'm just not running fast enough to make a really big difference. But on a bike, I'm going 22 to 26 miles an hour on the road bike, and less than that certainly on a mountain bike. But now you've got a lot of convective air movement, cooling, and helps with a lot of evaporation. So I think finding some water to pour over me if I'm moving fast enough, it can help. But some of the elites I work with, I mean, they're running fast enough that they actually does make some difference. I'm sure how you feel it, but again, it's all going to minimize the rise in body temperature. It's not going to be like transformational completely. The big thing really is getting the body heat adapted.
What about any pacing adjustments? Is there a guideline you use as far as, if it's over 80 degrees, adjust your pace by this much or your wattage by this much?
It's a fantastic question. I don't have a very specific answer for you, but pacing is absolutely fantastic. And it's just such an interesting question because there's so many layers to the psychology of I told you before my undergrad was in psychology, so I kind of geek out on the side, even though I never went very far with it. But uh, so in general, if it's going to be hot, it's going to be hot, you need to slow down a bit, right? But the challenge is that a lot of, especially in bike racing, but I'd say even in a lot of running races or on the road races, if you're drafting behind somebody, you're getting a lot less. You're doing less work because you're getting some decreased wind resistance, but you're also not getting the airflow over you as much, right? So it's this difficult balance. So again, when it comes to pacing, I really have struggled with giving people straight up recommendations. You take a 1,500-meter runner I have, right? I can't tell them to change their pacing because they're running. I mean, I just watched the NC2A. Again, I work with the women's side much more than the men's side in the Ducks. And I was watching a lot of the women 1,500-meter runners I coach. Or I don't coach. I'm their thermophysiologist. But they one of the groups went out really, really fast. Another group went out really, really slow, and so they have no control over one of different heats, I should say, right? And it's you can't control that. So, and that's true for a lot of things. But if you think about the average person, like I put myself in that category, right? Going out and doing a run or doing a 10K or for me a gravel ride. Um, I need to be really thoughtful about how long it's going to be. Most gravel races are almost 3 hours long, right? And 2.5 to 3 hours distance I'm doing, sometimes longer. And I got to be thoughtful about, okay, it's going to get really, really hot. If I really go hard at the start, am I generating so much heat and have a hard time dumping that, or do I need to start a little slower, or do I kind of find that balance as I'm going along? And from that, I don't really wear heart rate monitors too much. I don't really wear there's some things you can do to measure estimates of core temperature. And I just kind of found that paying attention to how I'm feeling really works the best. And so knowing where I am, like, okay, I feel like I'm getting kind of hot. I need to, try and ride in the shade a little bit more. I need to try and stop drafting so much, get a little of wind coming across me, or do my part in the front for a little bit. In those kind of things. So it's we could probably have 2 full shows simply on pacing
Yeah.
strategies around things, right? Because there's so many different aspects to it.
What about someone makes the mistake? We've all done this. They go out too hot. They get too hot. What are some strategies for, you just mentioned dumping heat? Is there anything the person can do at that point?
Yeah, so it's going to be all context dependent, right? So I've done a race called La Ruta de los Conquistadores in Costa Rica, which is known as one of the hardest mountain bike races in the world, and I overcooked it. Really steep jungle, humidity, and I was invited as a thermoregulation expert. I just didn't want to be this thermoregulation expert who died in the heat. And I've got to tell you, it wasn't too far from that. But I would find a stream, and unfortunately, the stream wasn't really cooling me off a little bit. I would stop the bike, jump in the stream, and just lay there for a minute, and then get back in and start going again. So if there's that kind of thing you can do, is possible. If you're running a marathon or you're doing Ironman and you're out in Kona, then there's not a whole lot you can do. It's really about monitoring your own pace, slowing it down. I always tell cyclists, when they're going up a really long climb, um, if there's parts of the road that have shade coming through, to weave in and out of the shade, like really try and stay in the shade parts of it, because that solar radiation adds a whole another element to you. It's probably the same thing for runners, right? It's running on the shady parts of a street versus not. Again, in Kona, there's not that much shade out there, and then other than that, it's trying to find that balance about how intensely you need to go, making sure you're staying hydrated, because oftentimes if you're becoming more and more dehydrated, you're feeling the heat more and you're slowing down more. But the going back to my we're a bunch of big chunks of meat thing, if you do slow down and you can get some air movement off over you, especially on a humid day, you really want to have as much air movement as you can, then you may be able to cool back down again and start going, picking up your pace again as it kind of cools off. So it's a real difficult once you're overheated, it's hard to come. It's kind of like once you've balked, right? Once you run out of glycogen and glucose, yes, you can start eating some more glucose. You can put some things back and start taking some simple sugars and you start feeling a little better. But you're already way behind that point. Like you're just not going to get back to the full pace. I think that's probably true for like getting overheated as well.
Mm-hmm.
So avoiding it in the front end is really important.
Yeah. All right. So with this topic, I feel I don't know what I don't know. So with our last question, is there any concern or advice you think we've overlooked to ask you?
Yeah, a really big one for me is I get a lot of people asking me, hey, I'm a triathlete or I'm a cyclist and I'm a decent age grouper and I really want to add a heat acclimation protocol because I hear it can make me faster. And if you do it right, there's things that can happen. You do heat acclimation protocol over 5-6 weeks, you can actually increase your red blood cell mass, you can increase your durability and other things that we've looked at. But when I start talking to them, what I oftentimes find is that they don't have their house in order, meaning they're not getting good sleep, right? They're not doing smart recovery. A lot of age groupers, and this, even at the elite level, but I'd say a lot of age groupers, and more so because they don't have the coaches watching everything they do, are typically overreached a little bit, like it's on their way to overtrain. They're doing too much. They're not allowing for good recovery. They're not watching their hydration. I sometimes surprise my athletes and say, hey, you're going to give me a urine sample right now. They're like, yeah, but I'm like, nope, remember we talked about this. Like you told me you're going to be hydrating. I'm going to take a urine sample right now. You should be hydrated at this moment. And they're not, right? It's good. I don't chastise them any mean. It's like, this is a sign. Like you can't fully recover if you are walking around dehydrated all the time. And for all endurance athletes, that's a chronic problem. That doesn't mean just drink straight water all the time. There's other problems that can cause, like hyponatremia. But so, eating salty foods, enough salty foods, and drinking enough water, those things are important. So, and then I look at their diet sometimes, and like, yeah, they're eating fairly healthy, but then they're eating a lot of sugars because, again, I'm a perfect example. I go out and I do a 5-hour bike ride. I'm taking a lot of sugars in during that time, right? So I sure as heck better get some really good proteins and healthy fats and those kind of things another time. So 90% of the time when I talk to an age grouper, and they say, I want to get faster with heat, I can say, let's get you so you can perform well in the heat. Let's get you so you can be more protected in the heat. But let's not make heat to try and make you faster. You've got 10 other things that you're not doing well. I don't quite say it that directly, but that things that you can improve upon, right? That will make you better, healthier, faster. And when we add heat, we have to remember that that is an additional stress. They need more recovery, right? They need to try and, like I said, separate the heat from their key workouts. They need to try and recover better. They need with hydration and everything else. So remember that heat is a stress, and it's an added stress on people who already have pretty high training load stress as well. So yeah, that's the biggest piece of advice I try and give people.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, I'm so glad I found you, and again, go Ducks. So
just down the road, yeah, exactly. Great that your daughter. We'll have to find out later if she's a human physiology major or not.
she is not.
Okay,
but Spanish. So with the Costa Rica thing, she's a psychology and Spanish double major.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, if you make it down to U of O, let me know, and I'll give you a tour of our facilities. We got some pretty. My lab is in Hayward Field, so it's it's a pretty spectacular place.
I wish we had talked earlier because I went down there. My daughter who goes there is a twin, so her twin brother was back in town for a few weeks in May, and so I went down with him and their older sister, and we spent the night in Eugene. And I hadn't been down there. It's sad to say I hadn't been down to visit her, so it was a good time. And oh, what a beautiful campus with all the beautiful plants that make for that pollen that is kind of killer.
Yes, exactly.
In Eugene.
Yeah. This time of year is spectacular. Well, all the rhododendrons and all this. I mean, it's just things just blooming like crazy. I'm sure in Portland too, but Eugene's a very, very green city for sure. But being at the toe end of Willamette Valley, we get all the grass seed growing between Portland and here, and it just all blows into us. And we have so many trees. Last month, every time you go out, every vehicle is covered in this yellow dust. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, great to talk with you. Take care.
Yeah. Nice meeting you both. Nice meeting you, Liz. Take care.
Liz, I loved seeing you nod along to his answer on the
his
last question.
He's like every coach's like inner voice right there. Everything that goes through our mind, we're telling to athletes. And it was just really good to hear it from the research, the thermal physiology perspective. And now I just said to him when he signed off, I want a thermal physiologist on my staff just to
On your
manage my
personal
life.
staff.
Yeah, my personal staff. Just put him on the payroll. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he can learn how to cook good dinners too. So, and empty that dishwasher. All right, folks, stay cool and thanks for listening. This podcast is a production of Another Mother Runner and Feisty Media. For more on Feisty and our other podcast events, workshops, and Feisty Fest this September, visit feisty.co. That's feisty.co.